Hello adventurers, and welcome back to my channel. Today we are at Branson, Missouri, where we are hanging out at Hard Work U and checking out a tractor museum. This is going to be an interesting one, and I think some of you are going to really resonate with this one. Now, this museum is absolutely free, and it is open from Monday through Saturday from 9 till 5, and oh my goodness, it is a building filled with joy. So let's go inside and learn a little bit more. Oh my goodness, hello. Are you the greeter? We love the greeter. I have known about this museum for quite a time, but at the same time, I've never been able to come in here. I don't understand a lot of the mechanics of the tractors, and so I thought today we could all learn a little bit more together, and this is a great place to do it because here at Hard Work U, they not only give you the cool displays that look really neat, but they also tell you a little bit more about what you're looking at so you can better understand it and get some brain wrinkles and then take those with you so the next time you see a tractor, you'll understand it a bit better. But it's not just tractors, it's other farm implements and things like that as well here. So I thought, what better day than today, because it's kind of a weird day that's overcast, to come inside a free attraction and just once again prove that there's always something to do if you kind of just browse around a little bit. So with that said, I'm going to show you kind of how that they share the information first, and then we'll go from some of these different displays and check them out. At the Gaetz Tractor Museum here at the College of the Ozarks, you'll find all of these different descriptors. It tells you not only where they got it. This one in this case is a Montgomery Ward seed cleaner that was donated by the Spear family, but it also tells you what the Spear family's product actually did. This particular seed cleaner right here was purchased by the Spear family shortly after World War II, and he was raised in the Oklahoma Panhandle, and that's where they frequently used this particular piece. But it also has some of the accessories that would go with it. You can see these screens right here. These would be used and put into a different section of this, and through that they would use a vibration, and you can see that on this sign, and it would use the vibration to go through the screens, and then it would separate kind of the good from the bad, and they would use this during the winter months, and they would clean the seeds, and then they would bag them, and then they would be able to put them in burlap sacks, and then they were weighed on something like this, and then after they were weighed, then they were sold to local farmers. And so this is kind of how it's set up here, where you can learn not only about the individual item, but where it came from, the people, the context, and how that would have played out in history. But they don't just have little equipment, they have larger equipment too, like this, which is a standard garden tractor, and this one is actually one that was used between 1925 and 1952, and the production runs consisted of 4 separate categories. Now, on this, you can find out more about those categories, but also how it was originally marketed to people. And I think that this is really neat because if you look into these, it shows you that each piece of this, it tells you kind of how it works. It goes into the details. So you can literally spend a long time learning just about tractors from a place like this. But one of the things I also really appreciate is they cite their sources. So you can find out more by going to the sources for which they have cited to give you more historic context. Now, a lot of these items in here that we will find are restored items. So in other words, when we're looking at these might have seen a better day at one point where they looked fresh off of the assembly line like this, but then they were beat up and used and abused and put to work in the fields, and now they have been brought back to life by various people. So I think that this is a really cool way to see things kind of in their like integrity phase of just like being brought back in their John Deere green in this particular scenario. But there's a lot of things here, and this is just one small space. So I'm going to kind of go over some of the smaller things with you, then we'll get into some of these larger things, and we're just going to have a good time today. We're just going to learn a little bit and see what we didn't know before we walked into the door right over here. Hey, what was that, Dad?
What's that?
I have no idea. It looks like a masher of some kind. It's solid on the bottom, but what is it, Dad?
It's probably like you would put it, like the Indians used to mash stuff.
Oh,
up.
so like a mortal and pestle kind of thing?
Mortal and pestle stuff.
And then you said that this one was a butter churn?
Butter churn.
So there's a churn in there, and you would crank it, and it would churn up all of this. Interesting. And this is called the Granny's Kitchen section. So most of these items are things that you would find somewhere in Granny's kitchen. Although this, even though I know that it picks up ice for the original refrigerators, it also looks like it could be used outside, because there's also this, which looks like a bigger version of it, and it's like a hay fork that you can pick up your hay with. So some of the things look very similar, but are used very differently. We were looking, and you'll notice there's a series of signs, and there used to be a company called Burma Shave that would advertise going down the sides of roads, and you would read it: a fair price paid to Farmer John, satisfies our hunger from this day on, Burma Shave. And actually on Route 66 at a few of the museums, I've seen some more of these Burma Shave signs. This is kind of fun. Just interesting context. Dad challenged me and asked me if I knew what this was, and I saw it and I thought because of this fitting on the end that it was like a stovepipe, but then I didn't see the context of going up here. There's a pulley. He said that this would be dumped into the well and it would pull the water up using this tube. So again, some of the things that I have seen might look similar. They might even be manufactured similarly by the same companies, but in fact they had very different uses. So that's kind of neat. Okay, we're going into this room first. I felt like we should start on one end of the building and work our way through. And as you can see, there are a lot of really neat things here. So let's divide and conquer. And I think I want to start with this one. The color of this seems more like a more modern color now. However, you know how they go full circle with colors? Well, I think that this might be one of those. It's kind of like a more matte finish on it. And this is a 1943 Ford 2N. It was produced in Dearborn, Michigan. And believe it or not, knowing the prices of today, it's gonna blow your mind. This was only $1,120, which was super, super expensive at the time. But now this thing would be like so much more expensive. You can find the history of the Ford N series right here. This was originally built in 1939, the grouping was. And so they had built several models of this before this one came out. And here you can find another nice display telling you a little bit more about how it worked, what the cylinders looked like, how the hydraulic lift worked. And then this guy right here is the man who actually donated this. This is William Bill Stecker from Carthage, Missouri. And then it says here who restored it, Joe Robbins. So it's kind of neat to have context for each of these. Now just think of this. This guy right here was used in some field somewhere in Missouri at some point. It was beat up. It served its purpose. It had probably gotten to a place where it was in a little worse for wear condition. Then they brought it to the College of the Ozarks, donated it, and this is what it looks like now for us to see. We have a Chevy Series 650 from 1954. This was a School of the Ozarks branded vehicle. I'm not sure if it's from the original School of the Ozarks, but it is now, and it's really cool. They have restored this. It is impeccable on the inside. It's absolutely beautiful. This is one of the neater things though, is they have restored it all the way down to all of the engine and everything. And if you've ever looked at your engine, it probably looks really chaotic in there. This also looks chaotic, but far less. But this is before we couldn't work on our own cars. And when I say that, I mean most of us. Mechanics today clearly can still work on their cars, but you know, there's computers. Dad was just telling me that this is the equivalent of the modern computer. This was how that it would generate the power. And that's it right there. It used a generator versus an alternator. And so all you needed was this. This was it. So if anything else went wrong, it was inside this part, and it was like a mechanical piece, and it was much more simplistic. Dad was telling me that this is a cream separator, so you would drop in your raw product and then it would come out and separate it for the different uses. Now, why is this important? Because right over here, this building right here, they have a whole milking station. They actually milk their own cows here on campus. They do all of their own animal husbandry and things like that. And everything is in-house here at Hard Work U. Why do I keep calling it Hard Work U? Because unlike most colleges in the United States, this college is very unique. For you to come here, you don't have to go into debt to pay off all of your bills, basically. You can actually come here and they give you some form of job, and you basically pay for your tuition through working through that job. And most of those jobs relate to the skill set that you would like to pursue. So for example, if you're interested in doing anything that has to do with hospitality, you might work in the Keeter Center. If you're interested in learning to be a chef, you might work in the Keeter Center. But if you're looking to be a mechanic, or you're wanting to learn a fine craft, you might work in the stained glass shop. You might work on these things. It's kind of interesting to see how this works, but the more you look into it, this is a very good solution to a very common problem that we all have with student loan debt. So I think that more colleges could kind of take a cue from Hard Work U. At the same time, it is definitely Hard Work U. They have a very structured schedule for all of the students because of that responsibility. So it's kind of interesting, but they get firsthand, like real life application of what it is that they're doing. And then whenever they go out into the job field, they already have experience in that. So the milking station over there, that's just part of that. This is neat because unlike the cars that we've been seeing or the tractors that are powered, this was horse drawn and it's been restored. So when you see these things, they look like they're just like brand new, but these things again have been hard at work. And this one has 2 different slots that you could put the horses, and then this thing, and then there's a space where a person would actually sit and direct what is happening on this machine. So it wasn't like the person walked alongside the horses and the machine did all the work. The person actually would direct what is happening. And this is called the McCormick Deering Folding Daisy Reaper. Now this was all the way back in the 1890s that they would use this particular piece of equipment, and they continued making these till 1934. This thing is huge. This thing is so huge. Just let me give you some context on how huge this is. It still goes up and up and up. I am 5'7". It is at least 2 of me tall. This is what this guy is called, Advanced Roomly from 1918, and it used kerosene and water. Now, whenever I was looking at this, I saw kerosene before I saw anything with the plaque, and I was like, that's strange. But Dad was just mentioning that by adding the water, what would happen is it would work better, but then it would ultimately damage the machine because of the blend. So this is very interesting. Now, what exactly did this guy do though? That's the real question. Well, it definitely had a lot of power to it, but then it, like most of these, have a very interesting like spikiness to them, so it could grab and go. These don't use tires in the traditional sense. They use these, and these rims rather, are almost as tall as me completely, if not a little bit taller. So it definitely needed to get around pretty well. It does have a shade structure up there to protect the person who is driving it, and I'm so impressed by the fact that they even have restored it down to the branding on it. Now when you come inside, you can see where the water tank actually is. You can also see where they have the shafts as well as the wheels to control everything. This one does not have a seat. You are not sitting while you are working on this guy. You are standing, and you have a very narrow platform, and there's no gate to keep you in. So one false step and you could fall right off the back of this thing. This is neat because there's all these little implements, and they're smaller looking than some of the ones that like Dad has for his tractor, so that's kind of cool. But here is a story of Robert C. Chappell, who was born near Minneapolis, Kansas, and he graduated high school. He was drafted into the Army Air Corps, and then he served as a bomber over Japan. But then he returned to the Kansas City area, and he was looking for something that he could use in his yard. He wanted something that was a smaller tractor. He found this one, and he was an avid collector of antiques. And so this is a Cub Cadet. Now, you've probably heard of Cub Cadet because they make lawnmowers, but this is actually a very small tractor. And that's why you have all of these cool implements. And now it has been restored, and it is here. And the sign also goes on to say that his family would be very proud of this, because he would be proud of the restoration that happened to this particular thing because it was so meaningful. This is really, really neat. It's great quality. It looks very simple. I am not a person who feels super comfortable on a tractor, although I can drive one, but this one seems like there's only a couple options for me. I think I could definitely do this one. It's also only about to my waist in height, so very, very small. This one is all about comfort. This seat is big enough for probably 2 people to sit on it realistically, or a big boy. It's a big boy seat. I really like this one. This one's also very interesting because it looks a bit different than some of the others that we have seen so far. The sign is on the other side. I'm going to get you some context, but I'm just going to show you a few of these after that so you can kind of get some ideas of what all they have available. But this is the Alice Chalmers, and it was developed between 1939 and 1940. It was a gas-fueled like implement, and this is the Model G that they had. Now again, because context matters, this was Richard C. Chappell's, and he was the guy who also had the Cub Cadet over there. So it's really cool that there's so many pieces from this one collector, and that's what makes this museum awesome, is the fact that they do have these pieces that have been donated, and part of it is because they want people like myself to come out here and be able to have some brain wrinkles and see things, but also by donating them to the college, the kids are able to learn about the variations of these things over time. And for those who are specific to that niche of education, it is so helpful to be able to have that historic record of these items and how they've been restored. And so that's pretty cool. Dad was showing me this one. What is this thing right down here?
This is a guard for the sycamore so you don't damage it when you're hitting it going. Sycamore's over here.
Oh.
You got blades on it, triangle shaped blades.
Yeah. Oh.
That's what you would use to cut grass or whatever you're cutting, and this here would help lay it over. I guess if you used to cut hay or something, you could lay it over, that way it would stay in the road.
Okay. So this is a much larger version of what we were seeing a while ago. Much, much larger, because you can see Dad is an average height man, and it's up to his waist on this one. But that sickle thing is just one of many. We also saw this one over here, which is quite large and in charge. It is a very different experience though, because this one is not on a tractor itself. This is one that hooks up to other things. So it's kind of neat to see the variety in here. Again, I'm just gonna show you around just a little bit, and then we'll talk about a few in a moment when we move into the other room. We moved from way across there. The cat came in. Hello, kitty kitty. This is apparently the tractor cat. We moved all the way over here, and this side has a little bit of different kind of stuff in here. There's a couple cars. There's an entire section that kind of lines this section that has what look like barbed wire, but I'm not sure. We're about to find out. And then there's also these. So let's just kind of make our way around this room and find out what exactly these things are. Start off here with the 1929 Ford Model A Huckster Depot hack. And this is interesting. I wasn't expecting cars in the Tractor Museum, but these are very nice. Here we learned that the very first station wagons were called the depot hacks or hucksters, and they worked primarily around train stations as hacks or taxi cabs. These are super cool. Again, restored. They look so nice. If we were looking inside of here, you can see there's a nice firm bench. There's no back cushion, nothing, no frills. Then they have just a very simple design on the dash. And in the back here, there's enough room for some luggage, but not really people. They also have their spare tire back here. So again, no frills. This one, on the other hand, looks more like a coach car where you could shuttle some people around, which would put it more in the station wagon category. There's a couple benches here. The dash still is a little bit more no frills, but you can see from the work that they've put into these are very nice. Here is the spare tire area on this one, a little bit different. First, we went to the Museum of Clean up in Pocatello. If you haven't seen that, watch that video so you can see more context on this one. But this is a 1935 Maytag washing machine. And this one has the motor underneath, and then you come up here and it's a very small basin, but you would open it up, put your things in, and then you would power it up, and that's how it would work. But then you would wring out your clothes up here. So it's still a lot of work as an actual person, unlike the washing machines of today where you just throw it in and forget about it. Just showing me this corn planter, and I noticed immediately when I came past it, the wood on this is just really, really pretty. But this is very, very, very old. From 1883 to 1929 approximately this would be used. I made it to the back corner and noticed this is in fact barbed wire. Barbed wire is very specific to the people that are using it, the region, and originally it was established so that they could make markers between properties and protect cattle and other livestock from people coming through. And so here you can kind of get closer to it and see that each one of these tells you what kind it is, when it originated, and there are so many of these displays. In fact, one here, all around that side over by the cars, and then also the entire wall behind me. You guys ever seen one of these? Do you know what it does? We're about to find out. I think this is interesting because there are 2 seats on here, and this has like a wooden base, but the rest of it is made out of what looks to be steel. There's also an interesting little lever back here. So what is it? In the comments below, if you know what this is, leave a comment. And if you don't know, don't worry, I'm about to tell you. This is actually the Dane Safety Steel 2-row corn cutter. And in this primitive picture, you can see there's a horse, there's 2 people who are kind of sitting, leaning into those seats, and they are gathering the corn as this thing goes over it and cuts it. And this was pulled by 1 horse, and it used what they considered to be knives underneath it to cut the corn stalks themselves. And then as they would gather it, they would be able to gather it and put it together and then take it to where they needed to be so that they could do the next processes, which, depending on what they were going to use it for, could have been a lot of things. Now, this was a super labor intensive process, but at the same time, it was less labor intensive than doing this by hand completely. So this was an upgrade. Even though it was still a lot, it was an upgrade. I have no idea what Dad is standing next to, but that thing is big.
100-gallon tank, self-oiling, junior load, down power spray rig.
It's a spray rig, so the fluid would be in here. It's like a half barrel and 100 gallons. There's a little door with a notch on the top so you could actually access that top part, but then the hose comes out and it comes over here and then works into all of this. This is interesting. I haven't ever seen anything like this. The self-oiling pump is very fascinating. And then on this side, there it is. There's the sprayer. Cool. You guys know that John Deere made bicycles. I did not, but apparently they did. And this is from 1974. This one right here is the McCormick Farmall 140 Maker International Harvester. Now, if we've been looking around at all the other tractors, this might look a little bit weird because normally when we've been looking at the tractors, the seat lines up perfectly with this section where the motor and everything else are. However, on the International Harvester, this particular model, this is where the seat is. And I thought this was kind of interesting because it looks different than the others, but this gave a better viewpoint for the farmer as they were doing their work. Now, underneath this, you can see that we have some of the implements that go right down here, and that's what would do the hard work. But this way, the farmer could get a better view of what's going on. Now, as we've been going around, you might notice there are these little piles of what look like kitty litter underneath these. I've noticed that these are here, and I've noticed there are some drips in some of them. I think what they're doing is on these older pieces of equipment, sometimes that they drip down some of the oils, and so they're catching all of that to make sure that the floor stays nice in here and doesn't get slick. So if you see one of these, that's what it is. The other thing that we've been noticing is the difference in the front tires. So on this one, the one that kind of sits offset, the tires are much more wide. On some of the tractors, they have just 1 tire in the front. And then there are these that have 2 tires, but they're kind of pointed inward, almost like they're like this. And my dad was just telling me kind of a funny story that probably wasn't so funny at the time, but my grandpa had a tractor like this, and it was really bad with the sand as a result of this tire situation. So at some point, they have made different variations of tractors. So even within each individual grouping, like the International or the John Deere, they have different looks for each one of them. And it probably had some kind of function that they thought, ooh, we need this. But it didn't always work out in all conditions. Right here is a pea holer from 1906. It's kind of a big thing, and you can see there's like a barrel that looks like it turns on here. There's a crank that you can crank it, and that would take the peas out of their shells basically. And so here you can see this one was actually an interpretive display that was done by one of the students here in Rogersville, and you can see that she put this together talking about the history of this particular implement. Again, just proving that this is a great educational resource for us, but also for the students here on campus. Ooh, so the before and after restoration. So when we were talking about that these things have been beat up and used, you can see where this one actually came from. This was the tractor of this particular farm, which was Lloyd Vernon Trogdon, and he was the original owner. They came from Boisiark or Bodark, Missouri, and this is what it looked like when they started on the restoration of this. It was really rusty. It was a couple different tones. It didn't look the best, but now it looks like this. Much better. It looks like it just came off the showroom floor. It's shiny, it's beautiful. You can see each piece. They have used the original coloration of the original unit and just restored it as opposed to changing the look of it. They have changed out the tires to make sure that they have the best so it can sit and be on display. They have gone in and worked on all the implements. They have made it functional again. And I think that's what's really great about all of these. It's a second life for every piece of this equipment. In here also, we see the S of O, so School of the Ozarks brand. And these are from the official farm manager, dairy manager, and dairy judging coach, which are pretty neat. But this wall is such a neat wall because if you look closely, this is a big quilt, but closer look, you see each one of these are all of the ribbons that they have collectively won. And there's some context for this over here. This ribbon quilt was created by Gail Groves, Gail Smith, Barbara Carnegie, and it is an item to be auctioned off originally at the Missouri Holstein sale in 2017. The proceeds went to the Missouri Junior Holstein Association for all the travel expenses. And this was such a neat one to see because they have preserved it and protected it. But these are all of the ribbons that were won at the time, and oh my goodness. Now coming around the corner into this room, the first thing that we see is this thing right here. This is actually a Cyclone Feed Power Corn Sheller. And so this was for corn, and it's pretty neat to see all of the components of this. Whenever you look, there's like a track system in here. You can see that it looks like little grinding wheels. So it would go through these little cogs right here, and that was part of the process. But there's a lot more to this. If you look carefully, there's belts in different directions. There are all sorts of interesting pieces, and it kind of looks like a railroad track going up into space there, but that set would actually lay down, and that was part of this process. So it's pretty neat to see something this large. This is huge, and I can only imagine how much corn went through this thing and ended up on somebody's table. Okay, this is Ray and Fern Garrison. They had Garrison's Feed Store in Alpena, which is a very short distance from here. But it's pretty neat because you can actually see what the feed store looked like and then also what the outside of the feed store looked like. This is part of a wall that kind of takes you around into the main area. And you can see here, as we kind of go around, there's a mural. Now, this mural is pretty neat because it shows you just some of the little pieces from the milk cans and one of the signs here to some more of the interesting things at the School of the Ozarks. But there's also a sign here that says agriculture is one of the most ancient, necessary, and important of all the occupations. And over 1/2 of the world's people and 1/3 of the entire world's land are involved in the essential elements of human survival and food. And so that's just one of the reasons why a place like this is pretty neat, because over time we've learned that it was much harder to create some of the things that we needed. So tractors and other implements like that made harvesting food for the masses much, much easier. And so coming in here, we get to see the evolution of the technology as they've come through these tractors and changed and evolved into much larger things that were able to make it much more efficient. Because one of the things that we have learned throughout all the museums that we have gone to is that life was very, very hard for the early people. They had none of this. So most of the things that they were doing were by hand. And as you can imagine, if you have a lot more mouths to feed and only the same 2 hands, that's going to be very difficult at best. So by doing something like creating tractors and other farm implements, you're able to mass produce that food so more people can eat, so more people can survive. And that made life easier and better. At the same time, at no point in time is a farmer's life super easy. They're out there in the early mornings. They're taking care of plants and animals whenever most of us want to stay inside and be cozy. And so we should always be thankful to the humble farmer. Now we were talking about the milking over here. So this is one of the earlier milking machines. They also have some of the cartons that have come right here from the School of the Ozarks. And there's a little bit of history here on this table about how they cleared the land and how they used various items. There's also some of these books, which are interesting because they tell us about tractors, their parts. They have all sorts of different maintenance things. So you can kind of see just what it takes to do the mechanics on one of these actual tractors. Notice the print is very small, so the average person here is going to be like, what are we looking at? But these are things that people would need to know in order to maintenance these and also to restore them. So I think that's nice that it has this display here because we can learn a little bit from that. Meanwhile, the cat friend is inside and it is now doing its daily grooming routine. That has been a joy to see the little cat. Hi, kitty. No, I'm interrupting grooming. Okay. Now before restoration, this 1929 Hart Part 1224 model looked like this. It was sold in the 1930s for $1,050 and again, looked a lot worse for wear. But now it looks like it just rolled off the assembly line floor. It is beautiful. It has this really nice gold accent. The white really pops for the branding. This is like a deep, deep forest green, almost black. You can see the original plates on it are nice and shiny. Everything looks so nice. The work that they have done is just incredible, once again, to get these to this place. But Dad has something he wants to show me over here, so let's go catch up with Dad. Dad is between a John Deere and a Gaetz Tractor, both of which are brands that I have heard of before. And he's going to the back. Where are we going, Dad? What you got? Ooh, is that a thrasher of some kind?
I think that's the blade there, and it lay across there, kind of like for hay or something.
Interesting. So this is very large. I would probably say this is at least 3.5 to 4 feet probably across. Now it being up high, it doesn't look quite as large and in charge as it would be if it was down on ground level, but is this one that was done by hand?
That's a hand done one.
Oh my goodness. So me just holding up my camera for a considerable amount of time, I'm just like wimpy. I can't imagine swinging this, even though it has a little thing that kind of helps you stabilize it. That's a lot of hard work. Again, hard work before the tractors. Now, since we looked at that, this Gaetz tractor that I was just going past, this thing is really nice. It is very big. This is probably one of the larger tractors in the room. Notice Dad isn't, like, he's just over 6 feet tall. This thing is almost as tall as he is up to just this point right here. The only thing taller than Dad on this entire tractor is this piece right here. This is the second largest tractor in the room next to this guy, which is the largest tractor, which is a 4020 diesel John Deere, and this thing is big. Now when I say this is big, this is by no means the largest tractor that they now have. They have larger ones. In fact, when I was driving through West Texas on my way back to Texas, I was going through and I noticed that they had something that literally my entire van could fit under. So there's that. But this is one of the largest tractors in the room and it is very, very nice. Now, before we wrap up here, again, I just showed you some bullet points of some of the things that you can find here. There's so much cool information. The signs make it so user-friendly, but make sure that you stop off and read this whenever you come in. This is talking about the tractor restoration project and how the college has honored the donations of farm equipment to the museum and how this museum was made possible. And it's so neat to see that this particular center is here for us to, again, learn from, but also for the students to learn from. I think that places like this should be more visited, and again, it costs us absolutely $0 to come here. Now, while you're visiting College of the Ozarks, remember, not only the tractor area, but also the other museum. Go and check out the old mill, check out Patriot Park, eat at the Keeter Center, maybe pick up some crafts. You'll definitely like it. And if you are visiting whenever they have the cow milking, you can see it front and center through a nice window that shows you everything. I think that this is a great place to come. Everything here is just spectacular. And who knows, maybe you'll find a little kitty friend like we just did. I've had a blast coming here with you guys. Remember, we're not here for a long time, but we are here for a good time. Get some brain wrinkles, have some fun, and I'll see you next time. Bye!